ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. So after praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we like to always be grateful and thankful for the many blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He has given us that which is apparent and hidden. And from the greatest of blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give His servants is the opportunity to come together in a house from the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and increase in the knowledge of His religion. So we have to be grateful for the blessings in which we have, that of the ability to come together and remind ourselves about the religion of Islam based upon the book and the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as it is understood by our pious predecessors. We like to extend our thanks for the opportunity here at Masjid Al-Ikhlaas in Wilmington, Delaware, to have this opportunity to do such thing which we have just mentioned, of coming together, reminding ourselves upon unity, upon brotherhood, of that of the affairs of the religion of Al-Islam. So I know that the outline or the thing put out of dealing with the subject today would be from the reading of Minhaj al-Salikin from the great Imam Imam Sa'di. But we're going to take a brief moment, possibly most definitely 2 lessons, to give us a little introduction to that of dealing with fiqh. The aspect of fiqh and jurisprudence or Islamic jurisprudence. When did it begin? How did it begin? What did it break into? What is the meaning? What are the benefits of it? What is the ruling of it? Following a particular madhab and the likes of that. And then likewise discussing the aspect of dealing with the differencing of the madhahib. So us being in the introduction level, we will see that many of the things will be straightforward. Wudu is like this, salat is like this, fasting is like this, this is the proof, this is the proof, this is the proof. But one who kind of steps out and goes a little bit further than that, he'll find a lot of different statements, a lot of different aqwal of the ulama dealing with that particular issue in wudu or that particular issue in salat. So we want to kind of get a broader understanding of those issues and what it is based upon and what it comes from, so that when we do proceed in our readings and in our studies, we can kind of have a little bit of a better understanding of what is the intent and what is the meaning behind those particular statements. And as was stated, as to put it out there, that this isn't, somebody greater than teaching somebody less than. The intention is for all of us to come together and benefit. That you will benefit from this, I will benefit from you, and likewise down the line. It's very important that we keep in mind that we are all learning the religion of Al-Islam. Yes, I am presenting something to you brothers as well as sisters, but that does not mean that I am any more intelligent or any more smarter than any one of you. So if a benefit is given, we thank Allah and praise Him. And if there is a mistake or an error, then it is from the shaitan, and we have a discussion about it. We have a dialogue about it. And that leads me to another point before we proceed, is that I will try to give my best in it, and I request the same from all of you. I request the same from all of you. This is not a time to come and sit, twiddle our thumbs, look at this, look at that, what's he talking about? It's engagement, questions, answers, this and like that, review, so that we can achieve and maximize our benefit. So we ask that, if I am coming and bringing things that of importance, I expect the same from everybody else. That here you take home review, investigate, do your own little research if you have the ability, and benefit, and bring a benefit if you have the ability to do so. So, and moving on, what would be a benefit from taking this? That here we can summarize it to two. That here we will have a greater appreciation for fiqh. We will have a greater appreciation for the Islamic jurisprudence, especially when dealing with the imams of these particular madhahib and their statements and their positions. And then the second point would be that it will increase one's desire to study fiqh. It will increase one's desire to study fiqh. And this is very important. Many people have an excitement of dealing with a certain particular thing, but over time, a lot of times we will find that that excitement kind of wears out a little bit. Why is that? Because we truly do not understand the virtue of this particular science. So here with this, inshallah, bi'idhnillah, that we will find and we will hope that this will increase one's desire to study the aspect of fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence. And this is not usul fiqh. That's something different. This is just strictly dealing with fiqh. And inshallah, maybe in the future, if we see a little bit of ijtihad and a desire, we can present maybe an introduction to the aspect of usul fiqh also. So here, what does the actual word fiqh mean? The word fiqh, what does it actually mean? And here we see we will have it broken down into three categories or three definitions. One definition dealing with the Arabic language, one definition dealing with the legislation or shari, and one dealing with the technical, and that's the istilahi. So here in the Arabic language, it is fahm. The meaning is fahm, or understanding. And this is our broadest meaning. So you can have fiqh of, engineering, fiqh of medicine, fiqh of mechanics, fiqh of fiqh, whatever. It covers every aspect of it. So this word fiqh covers every aspect of the meaning of understanding, and it is general. So that is our biggest circle. That is our biggest circle and the most general meaning of the word fiqh. The second meaning of shari is that of dealing with all the aspects of the religion, all issues of the religion. So this entails how to pray, how to make wudu, how to make hajj, how to fast, how to buy, how to sell, how to marry, how to divorce. This is that aspect, but it is also the aspects of dealing with the names and attributes of Allah, dealing with the unseen, dealing with the angels, dealing with other aspects in dealing what would commonly be understood as aqeedah and a tawheed or the likes of that. And this is under the statement, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yufaqihu fid din." It gives them understanding of the religion, all realms of it, from the aqeedah and the aspects of worship and the mu'amalat. So this is a smaller circle. So this circle is inside the bigger circle. Then the third is that of the istilahi. And this is the main one that which we focus on in our classes of fiqh, in our Islamic or jurisprudence. And that's the technical meaning knowledge of the legislative rulings. Knowledge of the legislative rulings. So, wudu, prayer, how to fast, how to make hajj, how to pay zakat, how to, all the actions of Islam is covered in this meaning and this understanding of fiqh. And this is the main topic of what we will be going over in our classes to come. So this is strictly dealing with the actions of the worshipers and its relationship with the legislative rulings. So is it wajib? Is it not? Is it recommended? Is it disliked? All of that will come into discussion. The virtue can be understood, the virtue of this fiqh or Islamic jurisprudence. It is enough for the statement of Imam Ibn Qayyim, where he said the greatest proof to show the virtue of something is to look at its benefits. So the greatest proof to look at the virtue, to show the virtue of something, is to look at its benefits. So the one who thinks about the benefits of fiqh comes to know that it is the most virtuous science. And this is, of course, is after what? The knowledge of a tawheed, the knowledge of aqidah, and the affairs of the unseen and the likes of that. But dealing with the aspects of fiqh, you will find that a majority, if we want to put a percentage, maybe 90%, 95% of all of the issues that we deal with and what we come across are returned back to what? Fiqh. How do you make wudu? How do you make ghusl? What happens when this happens? When I'm praying, if I do this, where does that all go back to? Fiqh. So you see that there is a lot of benefit in coming to know this science as it should be known in that regards. And that statement can be found in I'lam al-Waqi'in from Ibn Qayyim. As for the ruling of learning fiqh, it is broken into two categories. That here you have some that it is fard aini and kifai. Now you have some that is obligatory upon every person. Nobody is excused from learning it. And then you have a communal wajib, meaning that if one or two individuals from that group learn it, that the sin is removed from the rest. And that is kifai. And what is it? So how do you pray? It's wajib that every Muslim prays, right? So here we have to know what? How to do it. What is the fiqh or the jurisprudence behind the aspect of prayer? Before that, what? Tahara. To know what to make wudu with, how to make wudu, what is permissible, what is not permissible. All that returns back to fiqh. And all of that is what? Obligatory for every Muslim to know. Every Muslim has to pray, so every Muslim must know how to make what? Tahara. And every Muslim must fast, so every Muslim must know how to what? Fast. Likewise in Hajj and then also Zakat, if you fall under that, then it is obligatory upon you. Likewise with the aspect of marriage. Brother who wants to get married, a sister wants to get married, they must what? Must have knowledge of marriage. And then likewise, once they're in that marriage, sad to say, we have to have knowledge of what? How to divorce if we have to. And not all marriages are perfect. So here Allah gave us a way that we must know how to do it correctly upon that of Islam. So here, those things become obligatory. Right? So for example, the aspect of menstrual cycle. Do we have to know anything about a menstrual cycle? No, we don't, because we don't have it. But now a woman, what? Absolutely. She has to know how to deal with herself in what? The aspect of her menstrual cycle. When to become pure, what is the ruling of the blood, what is this, what is that? These are very important affairs that a woman must know. But if a man wants to skip over those pages, no harm. No harm. Why? Because unless he's different, he doesn't have a menstrual cycle, right? So here we have the aspect of dealing with some affairs are obligatory upon everyone, some affairs are not. So how did this jurisprudence come about? How did this jurisprudence become? The ulama, they mentioned different stages, but we're going to stick with four stages. 4 stages of how the actual jurisprudence came to be. Our first stage is that of a tashri', of dealing with the actual legislation. The actual legislation coming down, that this was the first portion of it, how the start of it, the foundation of it. This stage began with the beginning of revelation to the Prophet ﷺ and ended when? When the Prophet ﷺ passed away. So during this period, legislation was being produced. And it happened in 2 separate times. One time, the first time in Mecca, and the second time in Medina. The first beginning portion of this tashri', the main focus was what? Aqidah. The main focus was Aqidah. And a little bit of jurisprudence. As you know, we'll get to the points of argumentation amongst the scholars in dealing with the prayer, when it became obligatory, when this and that. But the point being that there was very, very little jurisprudence when? In Mecca. Most of it was dealing with the Aqidah, dealing with the Tawheed, worship Allah alone. This is Allah, His names, His attributes, the unseen, the heaven, and the hell aspects of it. All of those affairs A majority of it was when? In the time of Medina. In the time of Mecca. Then, as we know, the Hijrah, this is when a majority of what? Of the fiqh came into play. The prayer, the fasting, the hajj, the zakat, all of these other things, now this fiqh. But what was still given precedence? The affairs of Aqidah. It continued. Just didn't stop because they went to Medina. It continued. But now in the time of Medina, you find a lot more of abundance of dealing with the rulings of jurisprudence and what we will be discussing. And this was established in three ways. Either it came directly from Allah with no reason or no point. All of it came directly from Allah, but meaning that there was no question, no reason, no necessity for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just laid it out. Another way was that of a question. Yas'alunaka. They ask you about this. Yas'alunaka an mahid. They ask you about the menstrual cycle. So here they say it was questions given to the Prophet and then it was revealed. And then the third was a sebeb. So there was a reason why it came down. Why this particular thing was revealed. Such as the how to pray in the time of war. So here we see what? That this is how the legislation was revealed. And as was mentioned, that the two main sources was that of the Quran was Sunnah. So here there is no mentioning of dealing with the ijma' and there is no qiyas. And that will come possibly in our studies of usul al-fiqh. But the two main sources, or two only sources, was that of what? The Quran and the Sunnah. This was the mastar of dealing with the tashri', or of the legislation. Then after that, after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, you had the jurisprudence before the schools of thought. Before the schools of jurisprudence, which we will come to. And this was the era of the companions and the tabi'een. The era of the companions and the tabi'een. So during this era, many of the fatwa and the judgments took place. So here, the Khulafa al-Rashideen, all of those companions, when they spread, that here they became leaders, they became governors, they became judges of their particular area. And they were what? Giving fatwa, making judgment. All of these things were recorded. In books. And there are three main books we will come to that cover that. So you will find many of the fatwa and judgments in this time. And they are mostly recorded in the books such as the Musannaf of Abdul Razak and Ibn Abi Shayba, and also Al-Awsat of Ibn Mundhir. These three books are your main returns of dealing with what? The statements, the fatwa, and the judgment of the companions. The fatwa and the judgment of the companions. So you will see that Umar did this, Abu Bakr did this, Ibn Umar did this, said this, gave this verdict, made this judgment in those three main books. And there are other books, but those are your main ones. It is also mentioned that there was 130 companions which had their fatwa and their judgment recorded. And this is all from Ibn Qayyim, I'lam Waqiyin. 7 of them were mentioned that they had the most, and they were Umar and Ali, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Aisha, Zayd ibn Thabit, Ibn Abbas, wa Ibn Umar. So the 7 main ones that were giving fatwa and making judgment were Umar, Ali, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Aisha, Zayd ibn Thabit, Ibn Abbas, and Ibn Umar. In fact, Ibn Qayyim said that all of jurisprudence comes from 4 Sahaba. 4 Sahaba. And we'll get to that in a moment. Then 13 were mentioned to be less than them. They were the middle. 13 of the companions were in the middle. So these 7 were in abundance. Then these 13 were a little bit less. And they were Abu Bakr, wa Uthman. So here's a question. Some of the scholars mention that the most knowledgeable Sahaba was who? Huh? Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr. It's a consensus that they all said the most knowledgeable companion was Abu Bakr. So why wouldn't he be the most? Why wouldn't he be in the first category? Huh? They're all busy.
First believer.
Huh?
First believer.
A first believer, huh? I mean, he was Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was the top guy, huh? No. How long was his Khalifa? 2 years. It's not a lot of time. How long was Umar? 10. So around 10 and a little bit more than 2 years. So of course Umar is going to have what? A lot more judgment, a lot more fatwa than Abu Bakr. Does that mean, what some people might claim? No. Abu Bakr, as a consensus of the scholars, he was the most knowledgeable of the companions. Then you have Uthman, Salama, Anas, Abu Sa'id, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, Abu Huraira, Abdullah ibn Umar, Ibn Zubair, Abu Musa, wa Salman al-Farisi. So they had the middle. They were in the middle. And inshallah we'll share this later so that you can write it down proper. And then the lesser group were a few Abu Darda, Hassan wa Hussein, and Ubay ibn Ka'b. May Allah be pleased with them all. So these were the main ones that were recorded in those particular books that were mentioned. The Musannaf of Abdul Razak and Ibn Abi Shayba, and Awsat li Ibn Mundhir. You'll find in that way. So here, from that point, we see that there was actual methodologies or schools that were made from the companions. And they were broken into three groups. That in Medina, that in Mecca, and then that in Iraq. So in these three groups, you had the beginning of dealing with jurisprudence. The beginning of jurisprudence, and where a majority of the statements of these particular companions, their statements were taken. So in Medina, you had Zayd ibn Thabit, and then Abdullah ibn Umar. Zayd ibn Thabit, and then Abdullah ibn Umar. As Malik mentions, Imam Malik, he mentions that is the correct sequence. And he was the most knowledgeable of dealing with that. Some say it was Abdullah ibn Umar, then Zayd ibn Thabit. But Malik, he mentions that it was actually Zayd ibn Thabit, then Ibn Umar. So here, but then a majority of it returns back to that of what? Abdullah ibn Umar. So Malik mentioned that Zayd ibn Thabit took knowledge directly from who? Umar. Then Ibn Umar took knowledge directly from Zayd ibn Thabit. Then Nafi' and Salim took knowledge from Abdullah ibn Umar. Then Az-Zuhri took knowledge from them. Then Malik took knowledge from him. So we see that is the chain, and that is the golden chain, as they say, of dealing with the riwayah of Malik ibn Anas. Then you had Mecca, was Abdullah ibn Abbas. Abdullah ibn Abbas was the muassis of dealing with the points of jurisprudence in Mecca. And then in Iraq, you had Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. And these are the four companions that Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah mentioned that all the jurisprudence comes from. These are the four companions that all the jurisprudence that we will deal with will be coming from. And this is to establish a point. This is to establish a point that some people say jurisprudence, and as we will see when we come to Minhaj al-Salikin, there's not a lot of a hadith. There's not a lot of ayat. A lot of it is what? Statement of Imam Sa'di. So they'll come and say, oh, it's just a statement of Imam Sa'di. But no, his statements go all the way back to where? All the way back to Imam Ahmed. And his statements go all the way back to these four companions. So to come and just say that, oh, Imam Sa'di is just talking, he's just saying things, oh, there's no dalil, there's no proof, there's no call Allah, call Rasul, this is oppression. This is oppression. Because as we see that these statements that we will come across, they go back to these companions, which goes back to who? To the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So here we have to be careful in some dealings in what we say about these aspects of dealing with fiqh. And this is like the Senate. See, in fiqh, the Senate isn't, a very big thing as it's in the aspects of mustalah hadith or hadith. But here if we see and we understand that this particular position, that this particular imam has made and built and established, that it returns back to a companion, and then it returns back, which directly returns back to either a statement of the Prophet or an ayat, we will have a greater appreciation for what? For that aspect and that position of that particular imam. From these four companions, many a tabi'i has come. But here there are main ones. There are main ones which we want to recognize and familiarize ourselves with these names. Why? Because as we grow, and maybe some of us will be blessed with the opportunity to go over and sit and maybe study a little bit and have a little bit of a research, they will come across these names. But now understanding where these names fall in the puzzle of dealing with jurisprudence gives you a greater appreciation and a greater desire to understand their position of dealing with it. So here in Medina, again from Abdullah ibn Umar and Zayd ibn Thabit, you had what is called the Fuqaha Sab'a. Fuqaha Sab'a. They were 7 tabi'i, and some differ in the aspects of them, in a few of them. But the 7 jurists of the tabi'in, which were very quickly Sa'id ibn Musayyib, Ubaydullah ibn Utbah ibn Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Urwa ibn Zubair, Qasim ibn Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, the grandson of Abu Bakr, Abu Bakr ibn Hazm, Kharija ibn Zayd, and then some of them mention Abu Salama Abdurrahman ibn Auf and Abdullah ibn Mubarak. But what is commonly mentioned were the first 7. And then you had Salim, the son of Ibn Umar, Nafi', the emancipated slave of Ibn Umar, and then Zuhri. Then in Mecca, you had Al-Ta, and this is from Abdullah ibn this is from Abdullah ibn Abbas. You had Al-Ta, Ta'us, Mujahid, and Ikramah. So these tabi'i took knowledge directly from the companion, and then the companion obviously from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is where we'll leave that off later. So anyway, we continue to the aspect of Al-Basra, and that would be considered, I guess, maybe northern Iraq. Northern Iraq. And that was from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. You had Hassan al-Basri, Ibn Sirin, Abu Qalaba, and Qatada. And then in Kufa, which we considered southern Iraq or below Baghdad, Al-Qama, then Ibrahim, Al-Nakha'i, wa Masruq, Abid, wa Sharih, Al-Qadi. So all of these names, they might be unfamiliar, they might be not, whatever, and you say, hey, in one ear, out the other, that's fine. No real importance to it right now. Again, this is just an introduction, so we can get a base to stand on in dealing with the aspect of what? A jurisprudence. Understanding that these men are not your average men. If you go back and read some of their biography, it'll make you feel like you're not a Muslim. It'll make you feel like you're not a Muslim. The way that these individuals sacrificed and gave and prayed and fasted, you'll look at it and be like, what am I doing? I'm doing absolutely nothing in Islam compared to these men. But these were the men who established and, brought forth this aspect of jurisprudence. So then, after them, you now have the imams. The imams. The third stage is the stage of the imams, or the madhahib. This is the beginning of the madhahib, of what we know today, basically. or the 4 schools of thought. I believe that they put it out there, or the schools of jurisprudence. And they were, as everybody knows, Abu Hanifa, Malik ibn Anas, Imam Shafi'i, and Ahmed ibn Hanbal. So here, these 4 imams are the most popular, most famous. There are others which we will discuss that were mundarasa, that they were like extinct, they were lost. So here, these are your 4 main schools of jurisprudence, and this is where a majority of the Jamhur come from, or the difference between this imam and that imam, and that imam and that imam, split, and the likes of those things. And we will discuss that in our second lesson, how to deal with the differencing between the particular madahib. This one saying, oh, I'm Shafi'i, this one says I'm Hanbali, you say this, I say this, let's go to war. No, that's not the case. So here we will deal with the aspects of how should we deal with it as beginners and students of knowledge in dealing with this aspect, familiarizing ourselves with these aspects of fiqh. How should we deal with these aspects of differencing amongst these particular madahib? So again, they were Abu Hanifa, Malik, Ash-Shafi'i, and Ahmed. And these are directly connected back to the schools. We will discuss that also, the different madaris of fiqh, dealing with the Dhahariya, dealing with Ashab al-Hadith, dealing with the Ra'i, and dealing with the Aqliyun, and dealing with those aspects of how they come about, the misguidance of them, and the position of Ahl Sunnah with them. So here in Medina, as we mentioned, it was Zayd ibn Thabit to Umar, ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar, to Nafi' as-Salim, to Zuhri, to Malik, to Ash-Shafi'i, to Ahmed. So pay attention to this. This is another point that we have to realize ourselves with, is that these 4 schools, even though some of the followers of them might cause division, but these imams of these 4 schools did what? They took knowledge from each other. They studied with each other. This one sat at the feet of that one, and that one sat at the feet of that one. So here, if they sat at the feet of each other, what's our problem? If the imams that you claim to follow, you claim to hold fast to, sat at the feet of the other one, there's a tremendous statement of Imam Ahmed that we will mention, inshallah, that he mentioned about Imam Shafi'i, that here, what's your problem? What's your problem about this position or that position in that regards? So again, in Medina, first it was Umar, then Zayd ibn Thabit, then Abdullah ibn Umar, then it was to Nafi', then Salim, then Az-Zuhri, to Malik, then to Shafi'i, and then Ahmed. So you got 3 of the imams that took knowledge from each other. Why not Abu Hanifa? Huh? No. Well, he was in Iraq, but that's not why. Because he did. He died. He passed away. So here, they couldn't take knowledge directly from Abu Hanifa because he was passed away, or they were 3 or 4. They were young. Then in Mecca, Ibn Abbas to Amr ibn Dinar, to Sufyan ibn Uyayna, to Ash-Shafi'i, and then to Ahmed. So that's your Senate in dealing with the aspect of jurisprudence in Mecca, the school of Mecca. So Abdullah ibn Abbas to Amr ibn Dinar, to Sufyan ibn Uyayna, to Ash-Shafi'i, then to Ahmed. Then in Iraq, you had Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, as mentioned, then to Al-Qamah, then to Ibrahim ibn Naqa'i, to Hamad ibn Salama, to Abu Hanifa. So that was your line there in dealing with the fiqh of Abu Hanifa. That it was Ibn Mas'ud to Al-Qamah, to Ibrahim al-Naqa'i, to Hamad ibn Salama, to Abu Hanifa. Then Abu Hanifa had 2 main students that were very well known, Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani and Abu Yusuf al-Qadi. Then Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he took knowledge from Abu Yusuf. He took knowledge from Abu Yusuf, which directly connects him to men, Abu Hanifa. And then likewise Shafi'i and Malik took it from Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Shaybani. So here you can see that in some way, shape, or form, they were what? All connected. They all took knowledge from each other. That this one took knowledge from that one took knowledge from this, and they all benefit from all benefited from each other. And then finally you have present day. Present day from like 1300 up until present day. And here you find that many of the scholars that teach in the Haram and other places, that they have a sanad going directly back to that particular madhab. They have a sanad going directly back to that particular madhab. So if he's Shafi'i, more than likely if he's an imam in that particular madhab, you will find that he has a sanad going all the way back to Imam Shafi'i, which makes him a continuation to that particular sanad. Likewise, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, and likewise the rest. Likewise, I believe Shaykh ibn Aqil, he has one, Imam Sa'di has one directly back to that of the fiqh of Hanbali. So here we see that those issues dealing in Minhaj al-Salikin, that they are coming directly and based directly upon who? Imam Ahmed, which goes back to that of that particular companion and the likes of that. And I don't know too much of the mashaykh now that have the particular, regards of it, but they are present. They are around. And whoever can bring that benefit, that would be a tremendous benefit. So some of the lost schools of jurisprudence, meaning lost what? That they are not practiced. They are not preserved, and they do not have any followers. From the main ones is Hassan al-Basri, Sufyan al-Thawri, Abdurrahman ibn Amr al-Awza'i, and then most of the time you'll find his name just that in the book, Awza'i. Abdurrahman ibn Amr, that's his name, Al-Layth ibn Sa'd, Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Ishaq ibn Rahaway, Ibrahim ibn Khalid, and he's more commonly known or in the books of Abu Thur, and Ibn Jarir, the Sahib al-Tafsir. So in these particular names, you will come across in abundance. That Ibn Uyayna says this, Abu Thur says this, Ishaq ibn Rahaway says this, and this, all in dealing with the aspects of fiqh. So you will come across their names in particular masail, but they do not have a madhab that is followed anymore. They did, but it eventually became lost or forgotten or just not practiced, like the four imams were. So here briefly we want to cover, before we run out of time, the four imams, some of their virtues and the likes of that. I did write down some of the books that one can deal with, but that might be a little bit too much. So we would just discuss some of the name, some virtues of them, somewhat each one said about the other and the likes of that, just so we can familiarize ourselves, but know that these particular madhahib were developed. So it wasn't just Abu Hanifa, boom. That here his students compiled, debated, took, checked, wrote, and then wrote, this is the position of Imam Abu Hanifa. Likewise with Imam Malik, likewise with Shafi, likewise with Ahmed ibn Hanbal, that they were based upon, investigation, research, questions, answers, dealing with this, dealing with that. Then they were compiled, put together, and then put into books where people now, to this present day, benefit and now know the understandings and the intricacies of that particular school of thought or that particular school of jurisprudence. So the first one, obviously, being Abu Hanifa. And I'm not going to mention the dates because maybe I hope that some of you brothers will go back and look at the birth and the death. But you will see also a little sequence in that. The birth of Abu Hanifa, somebody passed away. And then the death of Abu Hanifa, somebody was born. And then likewise down the line. So maybe that's a little, piece of candy that you guys can take and play with. So Abu Hanifa, his name was Nu'man ibn Thabit. And some say he was Farisi, some say he was Arabi. Not really important at the end of the day, but that was some of what people said. And he was the first of the four schools. And it was said that he has recited the Quran in one unit of prayer. There's two narrations from two of his students that they affirm that he was from the ones who recited the Quran in one rak'ah. Who else did that? Who else recited the Quran in one rak'ah? Uthman ibn Affan. That is authenticated that he likewise also recited the Quran in one rak'ah. And he had the nickname of the pole. They gave the nickname to Abu Hanifa, the pole. Why? From his continuous standing in prayer. His continuing standing in prayer. So he was nicknamed the pole for his abundance of praying. Imam Malik said about him that if he spoke to you about a post, that he would make you think it was from gold because of his strong ability to debate. And this is one of the virtues of Abu Hanifa, that he had a halaqat of what? Munadhara. A munadhara. And that is the debate. That an issue would come and he would throw it on his students. And who are his students? Muhammad ibn Shibani and also Abu Yusuf. Muhaddithin, they were muhaddithin. They had the imams of the Arabic language, the imams of hadith, imams of this and this and this. And they say, what's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on that? What's your opinion on this? And they would debate it. And sometimes they said some debates would last months, to the point that then his students would record Abu Hanifa's position in this particular thing is A, B, C, D, and E. And then to a point that some of them even came and said that Abu Hanifa was wrong in this issue, in this issue, in this issue. And they would say, how? When he has the imam of hadith, an imam of lugha, an imam of this in his halaqah. And it was in a time of munadhara. What's this issue? What's that issue? What's this issue? But now, this was then. Now it's not the same. It's not the same. But then, when it was in the beginning, you'd find very strong positions, very strong points in dealing with the aspects of jurisprudence. But he had a great ability to debate, to the point that if you saw this, he'd come and say, this is from gold. This is from gold. And he would be able to argue with you or debate with you until you believe that it was what? From gold. That's how strong he was at the aspect of debate. Abdullah ibn Mubarak said that he is the most knowledgeable of the people, and Imam Shafi'i said that the people of fiqh are dependent upon Abi Hanifa. And his main students which spread the fiqh of Abi Hanifa is Muhammad ibn Hassan, or Muhammad ibn Hassan, and the foundations of the school are founded in 6 books. So foundations of the madhab of Abu Hanifa, or Abi Hanifa, based upon 6 books. And like I said, with the books we'll leave alone, because it's a little bit big. But that here, going into the particular books of dealing with the particular madhab, there are main books, and then there are, maybe you can say, side books. So here, we'll leave that off. Then we have Imam Malik. Imam Malik was directly after Abu Hanifa. So he is Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik ibn Abi Amr. So is he the son of Anas ibn Malik? Is he the son of Anas ibn Malik? No, just wait. So Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik. He's not the son of Anas ibn Malik. He just has the name. He just has the name of this companion. But he is not in any way, shape, or form related to Anas ibn Malik. That would be a little bit weird. But no, he's not. His name Malik ibn Anas ibn Malik, but no relation to the companion Anas ibn Malik. His sister was asked what he did in his house, and she replied that he recited the Quran continuously. Ibn Wahab said, if you wanted me to fill the pages into a volume of the issues that Imam Malik said, I do not know, I can. And this is a lesson. This is an important lesson that all of us have to be familiar with. That here, this is Imam Malik, Imam ad-Dar Hijrah, that his student, Ibn Wahab, can come and compile a mujallid, maybe like volumes of books of how many times and what issue Imam Malik said what. I don't know. So a question comes, don't know. And that it was mentioned that one man came from Iraq with 40 issues, and Imam Malik said to 36 of them, don't know. So imagine that. Imagine you traveled from here to California in your car, easy now, in your car, to an imam, and you asked him 40 questions, and he said, I don't know the 36 of them. You'd be hot. Think of it. You're going to be upset, right? This man without a car, from Iraq to Medina. I don't know how far that is, but it's far. I don't know how many miles or whatever, but it's far, just to ask Imam Malik these 40 questions. And 36 of them don't know. But that's adab. That's adab with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not to be quick. Oh, well, I think I read it here, this and that. I memorized this, so it must be that. Imam Malik, I don't know. It's a good lesson for every student. It's a good lesson for every student, even if you might know the answer. Even if you might know the answer, but you're not sure of the dalil. You might know what is correct, but you can't bring that dalil. Man, I'm not sure. It's no harm on you. It's better for you to say, I don't know, than to give an answer that you might regret. To give an answer that you might regret. So here, I don't know. Good lesson. It's a good lesson for all us to be reminded of. He started giving religious verdicts at the age of 21. So he had a courtesy. He was giving fatwa and teaching at the age of 21. But this was only after 70 of the scholars of Medina bore witness to his ability. So he was tried and tested. He was tried and tested, and he was proven to be successful in the aspects of dealing with the teaching and the fatwa in Medina. Imam Shafi'i said, if the scholars are mentioned, then Malik is the star of them. If the scholars are mentioned, then Malik is the star of them. And here the main book of fiqh returns back to the Muwatta. It returns back to the Muwatta. So here you have the Muwatta not only is a book of hadith, but it is also a book of fiqh. It is also a book of fiqh. For every chapter or over that particular hadith is fiqh. The chapters that we read in Bukhari and Muslim, Bab, such and such is the fiqh. It's the fiqh of that particular hadith. So Imam Malik, not only did he narrate the hadith, but he also put chapters of fiqh over those particular books. Then his students branched off. Some dealt strictly with the hadith. Some dealt strictly with the aspects of fiqh. And this is how the madhab of Imam Malik came to be. So then we go to Imam Shafi'i. And he is Muhammad ibn Idris. Muhammad ibn Idris. Imam Shafi'i was known to have taken knowledge from Imam Malik in Medina. It is also reported he has taken knowledge from the ulama of Mecca, such as Ibn Uyayna, and in Baghdad from the likes of Muhammad ibn Hassan, al-Shaybani. He also tried to make a bridge between the schools of Medina and Mecca and in Iraq, as we will come to see that the Madaris are Hijaz wa Iraq, and there was some sort of competition between them. Some sort of competition between Hijaz wa Iraq. Imam Shafi'i tried to bring a bridge between them two. He tried to bring a bridge between the two by bringing them all together and bringing them, all into one. And that it was mentioned that he finished the Quran 60 times during Ramadan. That he made a khatam of the Quran 60 times during Ramadan. So he finished it once in the morning and once at night. 60 times in 1 month. Some of us, la ilaha illallah. So here, take a look and be mindful when we deal with these issues of jurisprudence that these are not your average men. These are not your average men. These men are blessed and gifted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was also mentioned that he would break his nights into thirds. The first third, he would write. Second third, he would pray. And the last third, he would sleep. And one of his students who spent the evening with him, that when he stood for the night prayer, he would pray a third, and he would not pass over 50 ayats. So he'd pray a third of the night, only reciting 50 ayats. So he'd recite 50 ayats, repeat. Recite 50 ayats, repeat. Until the third of the night was over. And he said sometimes he might go to 100. So here is that of the emphasis and the precision that they had in dealing with the Quran. Standing at night reciting just 50 ayats. Can you imagine just reciting it those ayats 50 times? Maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 times in one night? The Quran is going to be with you. It's going to be in your heart. It's going to be a part of you. So here, this is what these imams did. This is what these imams did with the Quran. This 60 times in Ramadan is is mind-blowing. Once in the morning, once in the evening. So here, the Quran is part of them. So it is also mentioned that he finished the Quran when he was 7 years old. And he finished the memorization of the Muwatta when he was 10. And he read it on Malik. He read it on Imam Malik. He read the Muwatta to Imam Malik. And he was given permission to give religious verdicts at the age of 15. So this is the youth. This is the youth of these imams at their time. Our youth, la ilaha illallah. So here we have to be mindful that 15 and he was giving religious verdicts. And there is one point that we want to highlight in dealing with, specifically in dealing with Imam Shafi'i. And that is when we come, or maybe you come across, you will see that sometimes it is mentioned that the madhab of Imam Shafi'i Qadim, and the madhab of Imam Shafi'i Jadid. That they will have an old Imam Shafi'i and then a new Imam Shafi'i, or jurisprudence of old Imam Shafi'i and his new. This is only because while he was in Baghdad that he wrote books on usul, books on fiqh, on jurisprudence and the likes of that. And this was what would be called his old madhab, his old school of jurisprudence. So I'm trying to get the words right. His old school of jurisprudence. Then when he traveled to Egypt, he reviewed. And he came up with new positions and new writings in dealing with usul and jurisprudence. And this is where his two main books come from. And this is where a majority of the madhab of Imam Shafi'i is based upon. The new Imam Shafi'i. Not that he has a new madhab. It's just certain masail in that he reviewed and reviewed him and came up with a different position in the aspects of usul, as well as in that of dealing with a jurisprudence. And the two main writings which he wrote was and Risala. Which is dealing all with aspects of jurisprudence, and Risala, which is all dealing with the aspects of usul al-fiqh. And he was the first to write or compile the aspects of dealing with usul al-fiqh. And again, possibly that will come later on. So here, a majority of the madhab of dealing with Imam Shafi'i is what? A jadid. A majority of the positions, the statements of Imam Shafi'i fall under, quote unquote, the new school of jurisprudence of Imam Shafi'i. Based upon what? His book of And then dealing with his usul and dealing with the principles or points of jurisprudence, they come from the book Ar-Risala. Then finally we have Imam Ahmed. And he is Ahmed ibn Muhammad ibn Hanbal. He's well known. He's well-known Imam of the four Imams. And here it is known that he and Imam Shafi'i specifically took knowledge from each other. So one cannot say that Imam Ahmed was a student of Imam Shafi'i, and one cannot say that Imam Shafi'i was a student of Imam Ahmed. They took from each other. Imam Ahmed took from the aspects of fiqh, and Imam Shafi'i took from Imam Ahmed the aspects of hadith. Because Imam Ahmed was the Imam of hadith. And that is a point that it was mentioned that one day Imam Ahmed was seen with the reins of the donkey of Imam Shafi'i. He was walking with the donkey of Imam Shafi'i. So this great Imam Ahmed, had the reins of Imam Shafi'i. And his counterparts, Imam Ahmed's, student, his friends and the likes of that, they're saying, why are you doing such a thing when you have a sanad al-ala? You have a high sanad. You are much greater in the sanad than Imam Shafi'i. So he said that if I lose a high sanad, that I can go to a low sanad, a nazil, a sanad that is a little bit less, and still make a narration. He still can complete a narration. But he said, if this one loses his mind, there's no one else I can go to. So that's Imam Shafi'i. So it's kind of a virtue of both of them. A virtue of both of them. And then also from the virtues, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi, he mentioned that Imam Ahmed went around the world 2 times to compile his musnad. to compile his Musnad, the Musnad of Imam Ahmed, and that being in the Islamic world. So it wasn't what we know of today. Wherever there was a hadith, wherever there was knowledge being assimilated from the aspects of the ulama, it was mentioned that Imam Ahmed was there. Imam Ahmed was there. So if there was a halaqah saying hadathana, Imam Ahmed visited it and took knowledge from it. His son Abdullah mentioned that he used to pray 300 units of prayer a day. But then after his test, what was the test? In dealing with the Quran, and he became sick because of the whipping, that he prayed 150. Still more than any of us combined. And any of us combined, if we all came together, said, I prayed this in a day, and I prayed that, we still wouldn't reach 150. Allah knows best. But there's one man, even when his sickness hit him, that he still managed to pray 150 rakat. And the virtues of Imam Ahmed are well established and well known. And the thing that must be highlighted at this point, that many people mistakenly mention, that here that Imam Ahmed wasn't an imam of fiqh. That he wasn't an imam of fiqh, but he was an imam of hadith. And this is incorrect. This is a misconception that maybe some of the enemies or the ignorant of Islam put forth to downplay and to lower the status of this great imam. Sure, he had the Musnad, and that is sufficient. But he did not have the books of fiqh like Imam Shafi, Imam Malik, and Abu Hanifa, but they were compiled later on. They were compiled later on to see that he had many, many, many positions and many aspects of dealing of jurisprudence that are well known today in this time. And the books are mentioned that brought forth, and like I said, we will leave them off for maybe a later date or maybe another time and dealing with that. And if anybody wants to bring them, alhamdulillah, benefit. But as far as for us in the beginning stages and an introduction, we just want to present just a basic understanding of dealing with that. And anyone can easily go back and find the virtues of Imam Ahmed, find the virtues of Imam Malik, find the virtues of this and this. Be careful of a few because some of them might be exaggerated. But if you go back to the Nubala from Imam Dhahabi, you will find an abundance of ones that are correct and good, that will increase you in Iman. Will increase you in Iman, even though you might not be able to do those actions. You might not be able to do those actions that these Imam did, but it will increase you. MashaAllah, look what he did. Look at that. SubhanAllah. And it will maybe even give you encouragement to try. Encouragement to try to hit 300. Or at least 100. Maybe 50. If we keep it short, maybe 20. 20 is a good number. And then build on it. But here that is the point of reading these particular biographies of these men and being familiar with it so that we can have a greater of appreciation when we go and open up these books of dealing with jurisprudence and have a greater of appreciation of where it comes from. So here we know that it beginning up until the end and to that point, which is sufficient for us right now. There is more, a lot more, but this is sufficient for us right now. And now here we will stop in our next lesson, our next class. We will talk about the aspects of dealing with the different schools. Different schools of Hijaz, different schools of Iraq, which branch from them of dealing with the different branches of dealing with the Zahariya, where they come from, Ashab al-Ra'i, Ashab al-Hadith, and the aspects of the intellect. How do they come about? What's the position of misguidance in dealing with them? How do we deal with it when we read it in the books? You know, when we come across this is the position of Zahariya, this is the position of this. What do we do? How do we deal with it? And then likewise, when we come to the differencing, which is a lot. We're not going to mention a whole lot because we're still in our beginning stages. But if you do come across it, this imam says this, that imam says that, what do? I'm confused now. I don't want to practice. No, it's a tool and it's a lesson that we can take and become stronger in our deen with it. So inshallah, we will delay that for our next class. And then, inshallah, the third, we will get into our reading of Minhaj al-Salikin with a little, introduction to each point. Introduction to the chapters of that, basing foundation upon those acts of worship. So inshallah, we will stop here. If there's any questions, comments, concerns, anything that can be mentioned of benefit, that can be done so now. And if not, inshallah, we will stop and pray and continue next week.
I have a question, like regarding when you go to certain masajid and you see individuals like praying with their hands to the side. This is, and they Malik, right? So these individuals that pray like that is, no, that's not the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, how he prays. Is that prayer like valid? Being as though like, because I know even that, Jamal, what you said, who was it again? Imam Malik, he has a he's a noble scholar. Is that prayer, you know what I mean? Is it still valid? Being as though they say they follow Imam such and such, Imam Malik.
Yeah. Well, many of those, Sheikh Abdulaziz ibn Baz, he mentioned that their prayer is being valid if they pray in that way. But the point that we will come to is that you kind of have to be weary and cautious of those who say that they follow a particular madhab. Because they might say that they follow the madhab of Imam Malik, but I know absolutely nothing about the madhab. They just follow it because that their country follows it, their people follow it, whatever the case may be, and they just follow what those people are doing, not based upon anything in dealing with that particular madhab. So a lot of the madhab that are present in this day and time that are around, those who say that they follow that particular madhab or imam or whatever it may be, you have to be a little bit cautious of it. But when we come to it in our readings and dealing with that we know that is directly connected to that imam. But if you ask them, well, where is that from? They'll probably say, well, my dad did it, or the imam of my masjid did it. They won't say, well, Imam Shafi'i said in his book, da-da-da-da-da-da, to the end of it. It's not being connected to anything in the Quran or Sunnah. Huh? Fikum Barak.
As far as the imams in Mecca, you mentioned Abdullah ibn Abbas. From his students, I don't know if I heard you. Did you mention Qadada?
Ibn Qadada, yeah.
Okay. And then also from Medina, from the students of Zayd ibn Thabit.
Was Abdullah ibn Umar?
And then from them, you mentioned Sa'id ibn Musayyib.
He was from the Tabi'in, right. He was from the 7 jurists.
Now, I have a question in regards to him.
Okay.
Because I read his father and his grandfather was companions.
Well, some say that he was a companion. That he saw the Prophet before he accepted Islam. Then the Prophet died and he accepted Islam. But it's not a companion. Hafidh ibn Hajar mentions he's not a companion. So he is from the Tabi'in.
When you talked about Imam Malik, you said he taught at 21. This was after 70 blank.
70 of the scholars of Medina bore witness to his ability.
Just wanted to mention a quick benefit.
Ah.
The story of Imam Shafi'i. One time he visited Imam Ahmed. I don't know if you heard the story. And when Imam Shafi'i visited Imam Ahmed at nighttime, he ate with Imam Ahmed. And then when he went to go sleep, and this just shows the diligence, how these imams are not like you and I. These are imams who devoted their entire life to ilm. So when Imam Shafi'i went to the room, and the Fajr time came. So when Fajr time came, he went straight to Salah without making wudu. So they questioned, why did Imam Shafi'i not make wudu? So when they went and asked him, why did he not make wudu? Imam Shafi'i, he said, I stayed up the entire night pondering over one hadith. This one hadith was, Ya Aba Umayr, ma fa'al al-Nughayr. The statement of the Prophet ﷺ when he said to the little boy, when the little boy lost a bird, his bird, a little bird died. So the Prophet went to him and he said, oh, father of Umayr, what happened to the little bird? Giving the child comfort. So Imam Shafi'i stayed up the entire night pondering over this one hadith, and he extracted from it over 1,000 benefits. Over 1,000 benefits in one night. So this is just a benefit, a story of what happened between Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmed, that inshallah, that we could reflect over and show how they devoted their entire lives for this ilm, and how we should appreciate that.
I don't know if the question is premature for what you're introducing next week, but why is it that a lot of like the Sufiya and like Jamaat al-Tabligh and all of the Ash'aris, and they all say that they're Hanafi?
Yeah.
Like, what is
that's the region. I mean, for one, that could be the region. And Allah knows best. Allah knows best the reason behind the aspect of it. You know, people over the time, it became diluted or whatever in dealing with the following. And that is why nowadays you find that the most, I don't want to say fixated, but the most, madhab that you can benefit is that of the madhab of Imam Ahmed, from the simple aspect of the aqidah. You find that within the madhab of Imam Ahmed, the aqidah is preserved. Whereas if you see a Shafi'i, the followers, not Imam Shafi'i or any of those men that we mentioned, but the followers of today, you find that they have gone astray in dealing with the aspects of the names and attributes of Allah, in certain aspects of Aqidah. As it becomes relevant in aspects of your study of Usul al-Fiqh. You find many of the statements of the Ash'ira, the Mu'tazila, all following those particular madhahib, but they have gone astray in the aspects of what? Aqidah. Whereas that in the madhab of Imam Ahmed, not only do you find that the aspects of fiqh are sound, but then also the positions of Aqidah are also sound. So when it comes to the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, dealing with the qadr, dealing with the aspects of Jannah wa Nar, that you find that madhab is specifically preserve the aspects of Aqidah in that realm, and that is why it's important that we take a look into that aspect. But just because somebody says that they are Shafi'i, doesn't mean that they are misguided. Or somebody says that they are Maliki, that they are misguided. I mean, you can probably, but it doesn't mean it. It doesn't mean it because you can say that you're Hanbali and be misguided. So it doesn't necessarily mean that aspect of it, but just from the aspect of purity and the aspect of dealing with the religion of Islam, the Deen, Quran, wa Sunnah, you find that the madhab of Imam Ahmed is that which is mostly upon that, if not entirely upon that of correct aqidah, and also the aspects of fiqh. Sure, he's not the prophet. Sure, there will be mistakes or faults in that aspect of that, but that does not remove him from his level. It does not remove that. Until any of us can pray 300 rak'ah in one day, we have to keep our mouth shut, and that aspect of it. And can you worship Allah with that? Absolutely. If all we do is minhaj salikin, and we have it, we understand it, and we highlight it, and we take it, and we practice it, and we worship Allah with it, alhamdulillah, we're upon good. We're upon good. Even if there's differencing, even if differencing is mentioned in this or that, and we say, no, that's not the best position. It's not the rajih in this issue, but you stay upon that, alhamdulillah, you're upon good. You're upon good. Because why? You're following Imam Ahmed, who is following who? A companion, who is following who? The Prophet ﷺ, and that's a revelation. That's where you go back to. But now for the general people, be cautious. If somebody comes and says, well, I'm Shafi'i. Chances are he's not. He might say he is, but when you get into the Qawaid and the Usul and the likes, knows nothing about it. So how are you that? So here, you be a little bit cautious of dealing with that, and then trying to attribute that to that Imam. Trying to attribute that to, because maybe somebody will say, well, like we said, what you say, Jamaat Tabligh, maybe Abu Hanifa started that. He's the furthest from that aspect of that misguidance. Or whatever other group. Even the Ash'ira or the Mu'tazila or the Sufiya or whatever, these Imams had nothing of that belief. They were all upon that of Quran wa Sunnah. Aqidah Sahiha. All of them. No question, no argument. But now in the affairs of fiqh, sure. Argue here, this one's that, says that. No problem. No issue. But then later on, the Ash'ira, the Mu'tazila, all of them came, where fiqh is Shafi'i, but my belief is following that of the Mu'tazila. And that's wrong. So, but why? Allah knows best. Allah knows best of why they cling to that. Oh, I did actually hear one of them say because he was the first. That Abu Hanifa was the first. So his fiqh was the strongest because he was the first. It's reported that he saw Anas ibn Malik, so that would make him a tabi'i. But that's why I did hear one of them say that one time, but I don't know if that's all of them.
So this name, the schools of thought, right? Is it fair to say that it came from their students, the students of Imam Shafi?
Absolutely.
Ahmed?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I remember a statement, if I'm not mistaken, I believe believe it was Imam Shafi, rahimahullah ta'ala. He said, if I say something that's not in accordance with the Quran, it's going to take my statement and throw it.
They all said it. They all said it. Yeah, they all said it. So it's, and that's the point of this introduction, that we will see that all of these imams, their statements, even though a dalil might not be mentioned, that we know that it goes where? It goes back to that. Now, somebody else will question it, but we know that these imams will say that the ruling of wudu is this. What's your proof? This. Down the line, that proof might have got removed, and just the statement of, but we know that that imam, it returns back where? It returns back to the Qala Allah, Qala Rasul. Any imam that has that level of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's obligatory to have a good thought about him. And to say that he wouldn't make a statement in the religion, Imam Malik, I don't know. So you think he's going to come and make a lie, a fabrication, purposely about the religion? Come on, you have to have a better thought. So if that's it, we'll stop here. Elon, you have one more?
One more now. You said there were 130 companions that had their blank recorded.
Yeah, their fatwa and their judgments.
And you said the main ones were Umar, Ali, Aisha, Ibn Abdullah, Mas'ud, and who else?
Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Abbas, and Abdullah ibn Umar. And Zayd ibn Thabit. Go ahead. إلهنا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أستغفر الله وأتوب إليه.
الله أكبر الله